to continue with this, I just loaded the calculator into the hex editor right now. I wanted to work on a few other navigation keys, like the up and down arrow key, and then maybe also home and end to go to the beginning or the end of the line for the hex editor and the text editor. But before I do those things, for the hex editor, I wanted to work on lining up the bytes. So you see, there's an offset. When we get to the end of the line, since I print a space after every byte by default, there's, it's not exactly lined up here. It does line up eventually, about every fourth line, but, I want it all lined up so we can have an even experience, so it's consistent. If you count the bytes in the line, there is, I think, 27. So there's 27 of these bytes in the line. But also when we get to the end, this is position 79 out of 80 characters. For VGA text mode, this is position 0. So I think we can just have a check where if the X position of the cursor, say, is at 79, then we don't want to print a space. We just go back to get the next character. We just don't print a space if, like, the cursor X is 79. I think that'll fix that. Let's see. That may be a too good to be true kind of thing, because that would be really simple. But we'll see if that works or not. I believe that's input hex bytes. Here, before we print space to screen, let's compare word cursor X to 79, or some value that says like end of line. Let's make that. Maybe we'll use it later. So let's make that. Let's say end line position, end of line. End of line makes sense. We'll have that be equal to 79. So if we're at the end of the line, in the X we don't want to print a space. Let's just jump equal, right? Let's do this. Jump equal reset cursor X. Let's do that. Reset cursor X. And then we'll do the regular return from hex here. But we'll make a reset cursor X label, which is just going to move a 0 into that part. Move word cursor X 0. Oh, it's also going to, let's say move down one row. That makes more sense. Let's change this actually. Let's go move down one row. I don't know, we'll do that. Move down one row. There we go. We want to increment cursor Y if we're going down sort of virtual visual row on the screen. We want to increment or add one. I was trying to combine those there. Let's just increment Y, signify we're moving down one row, and then we'll return from hex. So that's not bad. Let's see what that does. I might have to mess with cursor Y some more. Well, I definitely will for the up and down arrow. That might take care of any other issues. Maybe, maybe not. Let's do this. I loaded the calculator just because it's a one sector file. The boot sect is as well, so maybe I'll do boot sect. And I don't have backspace in here yet, but we'll do the boot sect. Okay, that didn't do anything. I thought it would, but it did not. Interesting. Maybe because I'm not doing this in load file, I'm just doing it in new file. That would make sense. Let's do a new file and then check. So we'll just do a bunch of A's. So when it gets to the end of the line, it still prints the space. Interesting. 79, 80. We're doing 80 base. Never mind. We're doing 1 based indexing for the cursor, so that's why I'm confused. We shouldn't be, but we are. Or maybe we should be, I don't know. I might want to make cursor X 0 based index and not 1 based, maybe. It would help if I fully understood what I coded. That would be nice. Okay, well, let's make end of line 80. Sure. Should be 80. There we go. So I had to increase it to 80. All right, that's okay. If that causes an issue later on, because it's kind of one base compared to the 0 base index that it should be, then we can change that, but right now that works, which is good. Okay, but we did get the bytes to line up in the new file, so let's make sure the hex bytes line up when it loads the file, which is, oh, it's at the bottom here, load file hex. When I print, I should update the cursor X and Y in this as well. I should do that. So when I do this, let us increment. When I load it, let's also reset them. Reset cursor position. Let's do this first. Move cursor X 0, and we'll do cursor Y 0. Okay. And when they do this, we'll increment word cursor X. And the second one will do that as well. And then what I want to do is compare cursor X to end of line. And we'll do the same. Well, I already had moved down one line. We'll do go down one line. This is terrible coding. Definitely needs to be refactored. It's very smelly currently, but that's okay. If we don't go down one line, we'll do this and this. And increment word. And increment DI. We want to probably increment DI automatically, don't we? Yeah, we do. Put, of course, 2 endpoints, which isn't great, but that's okay. Go down one line. We'll reset cursor X again, so we'll move word cursor X 0, and we'll increment word cursor Y. 1, 2. If we do this, do a space and then increment, else reset and increment. I think that's okay. Early iterate for the loop there. So let's see if that does anything or breaks everything. It did. Undefined symbol, go down one line dot loop. Jump equal, go down one line. Oh, loop only goes to the last one of these. This is bad. Load file hex loop. Unfortunate, but we do have to do that. Print it and then delete that. Okay. There we go. So now let's try loading. Okay, it keeps loading. Interesting. Yeah, that's not good. It loads forever, so we did something wrong. Of course. Oh, we'll just do this. Decrement CX. And then we'll jump. This one, I mean, it'll decrement and loop anyway. Maybe I can't have 2 loop things within the same loop or it goes haywire. That's probably not the issue at all. But we'll see. No, it's not the issue at all. Well. Let's maybe try another label here. Let's see. This I'm going to call increment DI, I guess. Get rid of that. Just have one loop here. So we'll try that. But to the end of the line, we want to do this. Otherwise, you want to print out a space and then increment. Then increment DI. So does that fix our issue? Probably not. Very pessimistic. Oh no, that fixed it. Okay. I I guess I couldn't have multiple loop keywords, and I was probably incrementing di one too many times was probably the issue actually, but whatever, this kind of works here. So that kind of accomplishes what I wanted to do to get the bytes lined up and loading the file and for new file creation. Let's just check that actually. Even though I did and didn't change it, I just want to, make sure. And remember, backspace will blank out the current character and move left 1 byte, which it does. And then left moves left 1 byte. Unless it's at the beginning of the line, then we're not moving left. Right moves right 1 byte. Unless we're at the end of the line, then we don't move right. So what if we backspace back? Yeah, we can't backspace more than that. All right, so let's try to do up and down arrow keys. Okay, so let's do the down arrow first, I guess. We want to move 1 line down, rather. So let's compare word cursor Y. And again, this might have an issue with 1 base versus 0 base indexing. We'll see. It should be 0 to 24 for the rows on the screen. I might have to check for 25. I'm not sure. But I'm going to hope that right now we'll just check for 24, which is the end of the last row on the screen. Okay, if they are, we don't want to. Right now, we won't take in the input. So we implement scrolling later and scroll past the bottom of the screen, but we'll do get next hex character. If they're not at the bottom row of the screen, we want to move 1 row down, so we'll increment word cursor Y. X will stay the same. We'll have to increase DI wherever we're pointing at to the file, so we're pointing 1 row down. So we're probably... How many bytes are in a row? We said 27, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 27 bytes in a row. Okay. So we should just have to increase DI by 27, because the only time we increment DI is when a full byte has been written, I believe. So I think if we just increment DI by 27, we'll be okay. I don't know until I have a longer program to test, but... that makes sense to me. 27 bytes in a row, increment DI by that much, because that's the amount that's in 1 row. So let's do that. Add DI 27. Okay, and then we'll move the cursor down 1. So to move the cursor, we'll push word. Cursor Y first, and then cursor X, so the row and the column. Call move cursor, and then clean up the stack by adding 4 to the stack pointer. And then we'll go to get next hex character. Okay. So let's see if that worked. Reasonably well, probably didn't, but we'll see. Let's make a new file. We'll just say it's all A's right now. Okay. Well, we don't have the up arrow key, so I guess we can't check. Well, the cursor should still move down, and it does. So we know the cursor moves down. That's good. I can even go into here, because I don't set a boundary for that. But I figure that maybe kind of works. So it'd be similar for the up arrow key. Just instead of the end of the screen at 24, we check for the top of the screen at 0. If it's at 0, we don't want to move up. Taking the next character. If it is greater than 0, then we can move up and decrement the row value. So it's positive going down to 24, negative going up to 0. And we can subtract DI 27. And do the same thing here. We'll do 4YY. Copy all those. And go back to get next hex character. Oh, yeah, we'll do all the A's again. Maybe some F's in there, some B's, some C's, some D's, put it all in there. So go up to the F down. So up and down works, that's good. So how would we test this out? Well, I can do a simple example right now. F4. So by default, this will print a T, but let's go over here with the left arrow. Let's go down with the down arrow. Let's go up with the up arrow, and let's put in 52. And then, you know, for good measure, we'll go right with the right arrow to the end. So this should print an R at the cursor when I run it with $. And it does. So that seems to be, we affected the right bytes in DI in the file, so I think we're okay. I know it's a very basic test. It's not fully true, but I think we're all right with that. F4, let's save that as print test. Okay. Saved it there. Let's run the editor. We'll do print test. So let's move the up arrow key up here. And then the left. And then up again. So what's before our Q? So let's do 51. All right, and then we'll move over here. Or even we can go down here, it doesn't matter. This should print a Q at my cursor, I believe. It does not, probably because I'm affecting some weird location in memory. And I'm halted, so that's good. Where are we changing or affecting DI when we load a file? I mean, we're incrementing it. And the arrow key should be okay. We decrement once at the end, we save it. Write the keybinds at the bottom, move it back. And then we go to get the next character. Let's see if it runs by default. That runs an R. So I have to enter in a byte first. Interesting. So if I don't enter in anything and I try the $, nothing happens. But if I enter in something first, like FF or a byte, then it runs. So why do I have to enter in a byte and before I run it? So I wonder what file size is at that point. Let's see, load file hex again. What are we doing with file size? Are we even incrementing file size or probably not? So it has to be at least 1. I don't know. That doesn't make sense though. Which might be the issue. I don't think we're filling out the file size variable in here, editor file size. So that might be where the issue is. When we load it, we probably want to do that. Every time we increment DI, let's do that. Is it a word or a byte? I think it's a word. Has to be. Let's increment word editor file size. Then when we get the next hex character, if we go to immediately to input, should put it at that position. Because maybe before this was 0, not 1 or something. I don't know. It wasn't right. Also decrement after though, so I guess we'll try the same thing, see what happens. If this off by 1 stuff is not correct, I guess eventually I'll find out and fix it. We'll see. Hopefully it's correct though, but I don't know. Okay. That runs now by default. Runs and puts an R. Okay. And then halts. Let's see if I go all the way back. And change this to 51. And then go down to some arbitrary location. Prints a $. Yeah, file size must not be correct. Maybe the off by 1 is not truly off by 1. Let's see what happens if I get rid of these. Good so far. All right, let's go to the 52. Try to change the 52 to a 51. And then go down for no reason. So That prints a Q. Okay, so there was an off by one. There was not an off by one error. I was doing that for no reason. So there we go. Now we can go back up and change it. It's the right byte location in the file memory location, and then it seems to have taken effect. So that's good. So that would have been a bug, and it was a bug. So I'm glad I changed that and fixed that. All right, so let's continue on. The next couple of hopefully easy sort of navigation changes to make it a little bit easier will be, I want to do the home and end keys for the hex editor. So let's go back to get next hex character. Let's change this from check arrow keys to check navigation keys. Check nav keys. Let's do that. So that's the only place. Okay. Because the arrow keys and home and end, and maybe later page up, page down, whatever. I think kind of that's part of the navigation cluster, right? Or at least makes sense that they are related to navigating your source. So let's just put them down. We'll put them down here. I don't have these scan codes yet, but I'll look them up shortly. But let's compare to home and end. So we'll do home, or maybe home key. Yeah, we'll just do home and end, yeah. Maybe your keyboard doesn't have those, that's okay. You can ignore this part of the video then. Maybe. It'll be kind of similar, just a little different. Which means not kind of similar, but they'll have a tiny bit of calculation here, I believe. Well, end must be a special mnemonic, so let's do end key. We'll make it home key and end key. So we'll do move to beginning of line if they pressed home. Should be home pressed, otherwise we'll move to end of line if they pressed end. All right, not a semicolon there, regular colon. Okay, so what are the scan codes for home and end? We'll put these up here. Home key equals what? Well, let's look it up. Okay, here we go. Home. The scan code for home is 47. The scan code for end is 4F. So 47 for this. And hex, of course. And end key equals 4F. All right. So to move to the beginning of the line, well, we want to set cursor X to 0, I believe. So we'll do that. Set cursor X 0. We don't need to mess with Y at all because this is within one line that we're going to do. But how do we move the bytes at DI to point to the beginning of that line? Well, since there's 27, as we have up here, there's 27 hex bytes in a row. If we're at the end of the line and we go to the start of the line, we'll probably go back 27 or maybe 26 bytes. I'm not positive. It should be one of those two, though. We go from the beginning to the end of the line, I guess we'll go forward 27 bytes, or maybe 26 again. Maybe this one is off by one. But in the middle of a line to the beginning or end, we don't want to move that many. We want to take however many we've gone up to so far. So if each byte, well, other than the last one, each byte takes up 3 screen spaces. So cursor X 0 is the first one. Well, I guess cursor X 1 after the first nibble is put in. But cursor X is 3 before the second hex byte is put on the screen for the 2 hex nibbles in the space. So maybe we can like divide by 3 or modulo or something. So at this point, so cursor X would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. So 24, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we do have 8 bytes. So I guess if we're at the start of a byte, if we divide by 3, that would be 8. And then if we subtract that from DI, it should point to the beginning of the line. Because DI should only increment after we enter in a full byte. So that would be 8 at this point. If we're at the end of the line though, well, we can try dividing by 3, and if there's no remainder, then we just take that number. If there is a remainder, it should only be 1, and then we'd add 1 and move back that number of bytes in DI, if that makes sense. So if we're up to 78, which cursor X would be here, we can divide by this number of bytes, which would be 26, and subtract that from DI to go to the beginning of the line. Otherwise, the only other byte we'd be on, hopefully, is 79. That divided by 3 is 26, but with 1 remainder. So I guess we'd move back an extra byte at that point. Maybe we just go back 26 no matter what. I don't know. I might be overcomplicating things, as I usually do. Let's see. Well, I guess before we move it to 0, we need to divide. So 0 dx, AX is the lower 16 bits of the word value. So we do this, divide. Except we would move cursor X into AX, and then we divide by 3. Okay, and then DX would be the remainder. Okay. We can try that. So let's XOR DX. Let's move AX. Oh, it should automatically be a word. Move AX cursor X. Then we'll divide by 3. And we'll try moving AX bytes back. We'll see what happens with that. Then we'll move that cursor X to 0. And then we'll move the hardware cursor, which is Y first. And then jump next hex character, yes. Okay. So we'll see how that works. I'll fill out, or I'll load a whole line of characters, and then I'll go and change the thing again, and then we'll test and see if that works. Divide by 3 is invalid. That's good to know. It has to be in a register or the memory at a register. Yeah, that's true. Whatever. I'll divide by BX. There we go. So let's go up here. Let's press home, which brings me to B4. Let's go right. And let's change this to 54 would be a T. Let's change it to 51 for a Q, which I didn't do. Obviously, we'll do home again. 51 for a Q. Wow, so it doesn't do that right. It's printing at an offset. Well, whatever. I guess we can check if all this works or not. If this prints a Q, and it doesn't print anything, so I know that's wrong. Okay. So maybe at the end of a row, this isn't right. Possibly. Let's see. If I go to the top, right? And then I go left 1. Actually, let's just see if it prints by default with the arrow keys. 51. Yeah, that does work. Okay. So now let's go to the top. Let's press the left arrow key once, because we know the arrow keys work. And then let's press home. And then let's go over and do 51, and then that works. So I think it's only if the cursor's on the last byte in the row. So let's test that one more time to make sure. Go to the top on the last row. Let's press home. Let's go right. 51. No, that prints a Q. So what did I mess up? I don't know. Well, until this breaks, I'm going to say it's okay, which isn't great. But whatever, let's do end. I'm going to say right now I got the home key working in the hex editor until I have to fix it. We might have to divide again. We have to go to 78, so we have to get the number of bytes from wherever we are in the line up to 78. So 78 minus our cursor x, and then divide that by 3. Then we'll have to add that to di, and then we can just move the cursor. So let's do that. We'll have to divide again, I think, but let's so let's move 78 immediate value into AX, and then I'll subtract from 78, I'll subtract the value at cursor X. And then I'll divide by 3, and that should be the number of bytes I have to add to DI to get to the end of the row, hopefully. But then to move the hardware cursor, we'll move 78, because that is, well, I guess on screen it's 79 for the final byte, isn't it? So that makes it kind of confusing. Oh well, let's see what happens. If it doesn't work, we'll mess with it and debug, of course. Go up to the top, press the home key. All right, so let's go a couple bytes over here. Actually, let's go a couple bytes over here. Let's press end. End brings us all the way to the end because it is 79. Okay, so that does need to be 78. All right, we'll put in a bunch of bytes here. Go to the end of the line. All right, then we'll move up. So going to the end, does that. Prints a T. That doesn't guarantee that this byte is correct though. Home, go all the way up to the top. We'll do end. Go back, we'll go home. Let's change this to 52, so it should print an R. Let's go down, let's press end. Let's just check. It does print an R, okay. It looks like we got the end key working though, so till I discover otherwise, I'm gonna mark it as done for now. Okay, I think the only other key I wanted was delete, well, at least the only other key for the moment. So instead of check nav keys here, let's check delete. Check delete. All right. So what is the delete key for the ASCII, because it is a regular ASCII code. Should be. Maybe it's not. It might not be. Oh, delete. Delete's down here. 127, wow, or 7F. So 7F in hex. All right, so we should be able to compare AL to 7F. And we'll do something kind of similar for backspace, except we're just not going to move the cursor back. We'll keep it at the same byte that we're on, but we are gonna, I guess, remove it from the screen. Print a space or whatever, and then make it a 0 inside the file memory space. But if they didn't press delete, we'll go to check nav keys as normal. So let's copy this. And we don't need to move left. Paste that there. Okay, we'll do a current byte 0, but we're not going to decrement. We'll keep it on the current byte. We'll just make it 0, and then we'll jump to the next. Okay, so same thing as backspace, making the current 2 hex nibbles on the screen blank, moving a 0 to that byte for the file data, and then going back. So hopefully that was an easy change. Hopefully these changes get easier as I go along, get better or more experience. We'll see. 4001 CD10 FAF4. So let's go back and press delete on this 10. And nothing happens. So that's good. Let's test some stuff here. This may take up more sectors as well, depending. Let's put print hex here. Maybe we'll want this later anyway. XOR DX, DLAL. So we're just gonna print out at the cursor whatever the hex byte is that was from AL. I'm gonna put my debugging tags. Let's load. All right. Go up. So it's a 0 for the arrow keys. Interesting. Home. 0. Let's do right key 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. So what is delete key? It's a 0. That's why. So delete is not, okay, not in an ASCII character. I guess we'll check for the scan code then. Interesting. But makes sense, but you know, interesting. Alright. Alright, so delete is, well, I guess this page says it. I wonder why the ASCII table has it, but this doesn't. It's weird. Anyway, delete is 53. This has a 0 as the key, which is what I was getting. But okay. I did not need it for backspace. But oh well. Yeah, I'll just call it delete. It is 53. So we'll compare. Save scan code to delete. Or compare word probably, right? Yeah. Just go back here, left one key. Let's do delete. Nope, nothing happens. I wonder what, it says delete on my keyboard, DEL, so I wonder what that corresponds to. Well, let's put back what I just got rid of and do the same thing, but for AH. Let's just see. All right, so let's press delete. It says 53. Okay, that works. So it must have been something with FASM, even though it didn't give me an issue with it. So like if you put an end, that's an error for some reason. But I guess delete is a mnemonic in FASM, so it didn't work. Delete key does work though. So that's good. Okay. Well, whatever. These are just things that you have to know implicitly and understand, but now I know implicitly and understand, so I'm an idiot. Save scan code is a byte. Why am I why am I so stupid? You know how long I've been? It's probably like 15 minutes, 20 minutes down the drain. This is a byte. You big dummy. That's probably why it wasn't working. It had to be switched around the right way to make it a byte. Man, I'm stupid. So this should not print because I'm going to get rid of the 10. Does delete work? Yes. Wow. And that does nothing. It does halt though, but that's a 0. Okay, delete works. Compared to an actual byte value, that's all you need to do. Okay. I don't want to halt. I don't want to clear interrupts. I press delete for that. The cursor didn't move. We can print. If I delete and then go left, if I backspace it does. If I delete and then do the left arrow, it only goes over 2. That's interesting. So why is that? But I'm not moving the cursor. But the cursor, well, the cursor X is still set to the second nibble. That's why. So it's moving over 3 because it's offset by 1. So we need to subtract 1 to go back after this. that would be why. Put it there. Decrement. So I'll do move back to first nibble of hex byte, and that should fix that. So left arrow, let's delete, and then let's left arrow. There we go. Yep, that works. E40, B052, CD10. It's an R. Okay. Okay, well, delete works now, I think. Delete and backspace for the hex editor, as well as all 4 arrow keys somewhat for the hex editor, and we lined up the bytes for the hex editor. So I'm going to end this session here. And then, yeah, we'll get the text editor changes. So if you got this far, thanks for watching, man. I appreciate it. Or woman, or non-binary, whatever they call that. But anyway, whoever you are, I appreciate it. Thank you.